Hello and welcome to another video from Flash Jazz Cat. And this week we're going to show off what may be a world first, and I'm going to have a bit of a rant. So let's get into it. So what have we got here? We've got an Atari 65XE, which is in reasonably decent shape. The keyboard's a bit discoloured, console keys are a bit discoloured. Other than that, case is pretty decent. Now this one was sent in by a very regular customer in the UK for a slew of upgrades, which naturally includes the ultimate 1MB, but most interestingly of all, it also includes the Sophia 3 and the PokeyMAX 4. Now in case you don't know, Simius produces the Sophia 3, and that's the latest iteration of his video upgrade, which plugs into the GTIA socket, and it produces digital video, analog video, RGB, and very significantly the latest version, Sophia 3, has provision to output digital audio. Now where would you get a digital audio source on the 8-bit Atari? Well, another upgrade called PokeyMAX 4 specifically, does output SPDIF audio, digital audio, and you can hook that up to the Sophia 3 and finally get digital audio out of the DVI port. Now DVI is broadly signal compatible with HDMI, so using a passive DVI to HDMI cable like this one here, the theory was at least that you'd be able to get digital audio through the video connector and via HDMI on the display device. Now in the past when I've been building machines with Sophia in them, and this is the provided DVI daughter board which goes in place of the RF modulator, you can see I've cut a lovely hole there for it. To get audio out of the machine, you've either had to use some sort of custom cable to tap audio from the legacy monitor port, or what I've often done is put a little headphone jack here, which is necessary certainly when you've got a stereo audio source, an analog stereo audio source, because there was simply no other way to get the stereo audio out of the machine, because obviously we've only got one audio pin on the legacy monitor jack. So I'd need that little headphone jack, and the user would have to plug in a 3.5mm cable here, headphone cable if you like, and in addition to the DVI cable used to actually transmit the picture. So I've really been looking forward to the day when we could get digital audio out of this connector, because then we just simply don't have to use a cable or fit a headphone jack anywhere else on the machine. So that was good. So I'd been looking forward to that, and with this machine I finally got the chance to put it into practice and see if I could make it work. Now it didn't go absolutely smoothly, but I'll go into why that was as we get into the video, so stay tuned for that. So let's have a look in the machine. So in fact, inside the machine looks relatively sparse, and that's a testament to the size of modern upgrades, as their compactness. As you can see, this is this PokeyMAX 4 here. That's barely larger than the footprint of a Pokey chip, an original Pokey chip. Of course, the Pokey chip isn't used when you fit PokeyMAX 4, unlike the acid stereo board I featured in the previous video from Lotharek, and we'll get into him later on as well, I can promise you that. This one doesn't use the original Pokey chip. The whole thing is implemented on FPGA, I assume. This is the digital audio cable, which I'll talk about in depth in a little while. Here, hidden by some of these cables, is the Sophia 3 board. It's just got a little overhang at the back, just overhangs the back of the GTIA socket a bit, but not to any great extent. And then we've got this ribbon cable here, which is just hidden there, and I think that's called a micro match connector. And of course I've trimmed the cable to size, as I always do, shortened the cable, and that goes off to the little DVI daughter board at the back of the machine. We've also got UAV here, which sorts out the legacy video. As you can see, I've used little bits of wire to do the jumpers on the top, because when I direct customers to buy the kit version, presumably I either specify the wrong thing or they got confused and they buy the basic version, which doesn't come with any of the headers. But in point of fact, it's so cramped in here with these cables, these folded ribbon cables, that foregoing the header and just jumpering these things with little bits of wire actually makes the whole thing a lot more low profile. So it's probably, at the end of the day, it's just as good. But of course the basic version doesn't come with the header strip, and it doesn't come with the pin headers for the legs to plug it into the CD4050 socket, and I've run out of those headers. So it would be nice to actually receive the board in kit form. And the reason I want it in kit form is because I don't like the terminal block used on these boards when they arrive pre-assembled. I hate that green terminal block with the little screws in it, so that would come off anyway. So having the thing in kit form saves me the trouble of having to take that off and replace it with a DuPont connector. But as I say, it would be nice to actually receive the board with the jumpers, 2mm pitch jumper, pinnery, and the legs to solder onto the bottom of the board. So I need to buy some more round legs. We've also got, in here underneath the CPU, we have the SRAM board, the 64K SRAM board, again from Lotharek. And I'll go into that, the adventure that I had installing that, in a little while. And lastly, but not leastly, we've got the venerable Ultimate 1MB. Now let's have a closer look at this board here. So here is the Ultimate 1MB, and it's the latest purple revision of the board, as you can see. But what you probably can't see, unless I lift the board a little bit there like that, just to catch it in the light, is that this board is equipped with Renesas SRAM chips. Now, as supplied, these purple boards do not come with Renesas SRAM chips. They come with Alliance SRAM chips, like these ones here. So, obviously you're asking, John, how come this board's got Renesas chips on it? Well, because I took these ones off and replaced them with Renesas chips, which are actually pinched from a spare Incognito board, because the Incognitos are still supplied with Renesas SRAMs. Now, these Ultimate 1MB boards, going back now some, what would it be, 15 years or so since the first ones came out, always had Renesas SRAM chips on them. And I've got an article on my website that goes into this. Now, around about the beginning of 2024 it was, I think, but already. The time passes so quickly. Around about the beginning of 2024, spring 2024, as I've gone into this before as well, a high volume buyer of Ultimate 1MB in the UK reported to me that he was having issues with some slightly revised black Ultimate 1MB boards that he'd purchased from Retro Lemon. Now, this particular individual was buying the boards with the stock Candle firmware installed, upgrading them after the fact with my firmware, and since he was actually running a commercial operation, in essence, on eBay, pre-upgrading machines and selling them on the platform, he would pay me my commission for the firmware directly, which worked out very nicely, and I actually got more money than I would receive had he purchased the boards with my firmware pre-installed from Retro Lemon or Lotharek shop. So that was fine. Now, of course, what happened in this particular instance is he started to receive boards which turned out to have Alliance SRAMs on them instead of the Renesas SRAMs. And he was experiencing some stability issues. He would get the machine booting directly to the OS memory test, and it would show a ROM error, and he would get the machine locking up, black screening when it was turned on, strange glitches in the Ultimate 1MB setup menu, etc, etc, etc. And of course he complained to the vendor about this, and the vendor at Retro Lemon actually concluded that there was an incompatibility with my firmware on these newer revision boards until I disabused him of that supposition. Now, Lotharek, meanwhile, got wind of this complaint, and he decided he wasn't going to offer any after-sales support to this particular customer on the grounds that he believed the customer was taking advantage of my firmware product by flashing the devices after the fact. And I had to disabuse Lotharek of that misapprehension as well, because of course the individual in question was paying me my commission directly, which of course didn't work out very well for Lotharek because it denied him his cut of the commission. The upshot of this was that this particular high volume buyer of Ultimate 1MB thereby completely lost confidence in the upgrade as sold, and basically stopped installing them in machines, and he therefore stopped buying them from Retro Lemon. So they lost a fairly high volume buyer of the board because of the fact that they'd fucked about with the design and put these SRAMs on. Now, a mitigation, which we eventually discovered, was that if you change the PLCC flash ROM, this part here, and I did that with this machine because I experienced problems with it. If you change the PLCC flash ROM, just swap out the one supplied for a different one, obviously flash it with a USB programmer, that can alleviate this issue where the machine just boots directly to the memory test for reasons unknown. Now I tried that with this board. I'll flash some pictures up on the screen of the problems that I had with this board. And it isn't just this machine, of course, because I install Ultimate 1MB in a lot of Atari 8-bit computers as part of my work. And for the past 6 months or a year or so, it's all been purple boards that have come through, and almost every single time I put one in a computer, I have an issue. Issues are generally confined to things like the machine booting straight to the OS memory test after the Ultimate 1MB splash screen's cleared, and you just can't do anything about it. It just won't start the operating system because the operating system's startup test has detected a checksum error or something with the OS ROM or BASIC. And of course these things are both on the Ultimate 1MB flash ROM. This machine is the one I was working on prior to this one. This has got a purple Ultimate 1MB board. When I put the board in this machine, and all this machine's got in it is a VBXE and an Ultimate 1MB, 800XL here. Nothing too fancy about it, nothing unusual about it. It's got Alliance SRAMs on it, as you can see here, as they all have. When I put these two boards in, turned the machine on to test it, the OS jumped straight into the memory test and signified bad ROM. Now in this particular instance, swapping that PLCC flash ROM for this one here solves the issue. In fact, I'm going to demonstrate the issue to you with this machine right now. And I left the original ROM chip in this board specifically so I could show you this. So let's turn it on and see what happens. Ultimate 1MB splash screen. Straight to the OS memory test, showing bad ROM. I'm sorry the display's a little bit dark. It takes a while to warm up. At the end of the memory test, well, I'll show you what happens at the end of the memory test here. Oh, there we go. Just before we got to the end of the memory test there, the whole thing blows up. So let's swap the flash ROMs over. I have to take it's a little bit difficult to get the extraction tool in these boards because of the position of the MMU header, but I should be able to get it out. There we go. So there's the original flash ROM as provided on the board, as purchased. There's the one I took. I think it's off an old Incognito actually, and I've pre-flashed it with the firmware. So let's put that in. Okay, there we go. ROM replaced. I'll put this one out the way because it's, well, I don't actually know if there's anything wrong with the flash ROM. This just happens to be a workaround, if you like. I'm not necessarily saying that this is a fake ROM or a substandard part. The first one that I swapped out, maybe it was this one, maybe it was this one, it just did the same thing, which leads us to suppose there's actually a problem with the board, not the ROM. But anyway, this is the one that I put in that worked, so let's turn this on and see what happens. Boot screen, boots up, no problem whatsoever. So it appears that 800XL now works, and I can hopefully send it back to the customer and get paid. Now in this particular machine, when I did that PLCC flash ROM swap, and I tried several different ones, it kind of mitigated the issue, but there was still a problem. And the problem was that the machine would periodically boot up with items missing in the Ultimate 1MB setup menu. And I was doing a lot of work with this particular machine because I was busy updating the Sophia plugin, the Ultimate 1MB Sophia plugin, to work with the Sophia 3 board. This being the first Sophia 3 board I've actually had through my hands. So I took the opportunity to work on the plugin. Obviously I was using this machine to test it. I also was swapping in and out a Sophia 2 board as well, which I do own. I don't own a Sophia 3, to ensure backwards compatibility with the older board, so that was fine. Quite enjoyed that. And that gave me a chance to really test this machine, repeatedly power cycling it, rebooting it all the time to test this plugin. It would lose the configuration from time to time when you turned it on. Absolutely drove me up the wall. This was after I'd already installed the 64K SRAM board, and this was so depressing because the job of building this machine should have taken about 8 to 10 hours, I think, plus probably a bit of testing, and obviously I would have spent extra time working on the plugin. But I started this machine on Monday morning. I did about 8 hours work on it on Monday. I did another 4 or 5 hours work on it on Tuesday. I did a couple of hours work on it on Wednesday. And in the past, what I've been doing is actually replacing these things with boards from my own stock, older boards, which just worked without any problems because, of course, they've got Renesas SRAMs on them. So what did I do about it eventually? Well, you can probably guess, but let's have a closer look at the board again. Now, I have theorised in my article on my website and in prior videos that these purple boards here, this pair of pads here, is actually for a diode. It's marked D1, which would suggest a diode, and we've also got above it a resistor. So I've looked into this a little bit more closely. None of the purple boards have that diode installed. Now, you may remember in prior videos and in the article, I've discussed at length the preceding version of these boards, the first ones to be equipped with Alliance SRAM instead of Renesas SRAM, had a diode, usually bodged somewhere on the board. And I'll flash up a picture on the screen of what I'm talking about. Now, silicone diodes commonly provide a forward voltage drop. And in this case, the reason for the diode that was bodged onto the prior boards was to drop the 5-volt supply coming from this header here, from the OS-ROM socket, and drop that about 0.6 volts to about 4.3, 4.4 volts to enable Alliance SRAMs to function properly, because they don't like to work at 5 volts. They have problems working at TTL voltage in the Atari. So, to work around that problem, they put a diode on the 5-volt supply that powers the RAM. And that supposedly solved the issue, and it seemed to work to some extent. Whether this actually achieved the desired result or not, I don't know, because I did also have problems with the black boards that had the diode bodged onto them. And I often had to replace the PLCC flash ROMs on those boards as well. These boards, however, don't have the diode installed. This redesign of the board expressly provides pads for the diode D1 to provide a forward voltage drop of about 0.6 volts for the RAM to allow it to work properly. But it's not on the board. Why is it not on the board? What kind of testing did Lotharek do that allowed him to conclude that the diode wasn't necessary? Why is the fucking diode not on the board? Now, this resistor here, which apparently is to be removed if you do put the diode there, doesn't do anything to drop the voltage, because the voltage is measured at 5 volts on both sides of these pads here. So we've got the Alliance SRAM being powered at 5 volts, and we've got problems. So I was so pissed off with this situation on Thursday morning, having told the client that after 3 days of working on this machine, we still had issues, it was still losing the config, it was still acting strangely, there was missing items in the ultimate 1 megabyte menu, even though we've got an SRAM board installed. We've taken all the DRAMs off the board. So when I got up in the morning, I thought, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to replace the RAM. I'm going to put Renesas SRAMs on this board. I had to take the old SRAMs off the board with hot air, naturally. I used a guitar pickup cover, an old pickup cover, humbucker pickup cover, and put it over here to protect this socket, and I think I've pretty much preserved it. It's slightly bowed out at one side, but it's not too bad. Took the Alliance SRAMs off the board, took some Renesas SRAMs off an old Incognito board, soldered them on. It was a bit tricky to get in there, so that's not the prettiest thing in the world down here. I had to use a J-tip on the soldering iron to get into those, but the rest of the joints look nice. Put the board back in the machine, turned it on, and there was no problem whatsoever. It immediately worked perfectly. Now, given the reaction Lotharek had to my Side 3 video in July 2024, he obviously doesn't like problems like this being discussed in public, but, well, tough. He makes the boards, he knows what the diode pads are for, he's the one who decided to put Alliance SRAMs on these boards to reduce costs. Now, this board currently from Retro Lemon costs 88 quid. When these purple boards came out, I remember I mentioned it in the Side 3 video that they were going to be more expensive than the ones they replaced by about a tenner. I asked Jakob about this. I said, are these purple boards going to cost more than the black boards that they actually replaced? And he said, yes, by about a tenner. And of course, the prices continually escalated in that time. And they're supplied with the stock firmware, the stock candle firmware. And this is after cost cutting was implemented by using Alliance SRAMs instead of Renesas SRAMs. So how much do these Renesas SRAMs actually cost? Well, I went on, I'll show you. I went on AliExpress because I'm going to have to buy these things now, since this is the nuclear option to fix these boards. Every time I get one of these things through my hands now and it has a problem which can't be remedied by replacing the PLCC flash ROM, which I've also got to buy a supply of, if that doesn't fix the problem, now I'm going to have to replace the RAM and put the proper SRAM chips that actually fucking work on the board. So I went on AliExpress and I had a look. I can get 5 of these SRAMs for £10. So it probably makes sense, since we need 2 per board, I'll get 10 and see how that goes. So that'll be 20 quid. So what does that work out at per board? And this is me buying in small quantities. Obviously, if you're a big buyer, you could work out a discount, but let's just assume you're paying full price for them. £4 per board for the SRAM. £4 per board, £2 per chip. And the board sells for 88 quid, and they can't even put the proper fucking SRAM chips on the board to make it work. This thing just does not work properly as purchased. I'm going to tell you that right now. And if you've got a different experience of this, if you've bought one of these things, put it in a computer, and it's been absolutely fine, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear from you. Likewise, I would love to hear from people who've put these things in the computers and they haven't worked properly. And I have already heard from plenty of people who've put these boards and the prior version with the black boards with the diode bodged onto the 5-volt supply. I've had plenty of emails from people who've had problems with those boards. Obviously now, every time one of these things turns up, I'm like, oh Christ, I'm either going to have to change this chip. The proper solution to the problem is to put the correct SRAM chips on the board. That solves the issue. And then it works. 88 quid for a board that doesn't work when I put it in the computer. And of course that wasn't the only issue that I ran into when I was building this machine. The SRAM board, also from Lotharek, which you can also get from Retro Lemon. I'll flash that up on the screen for you. Oh, that's very nice, yes, yes. And he's even working on a new one, the Acid SRAM board, which gives you extended memory. So it looks to me like he's actually trying to replace. Lotharek is gradually trying to phase this out anyway. Even though it's such a good seller, it was such a good seller, and such a cash cow, but he's working on the Acid SRAM board now, which provides port B RAM, and I'm sure the functionality of this Acid SRAM board will eventually expand to push this thing out entirely, so maybe he doesn't give a shit about this anymore. But anyway, this SRAM board, I'll show you a picture what I had to do with that. When I first put the thing in, the machine kept black screening all the time. It just wouldn't boot up. I'd put a fresh precision CPU socket in here, and then I put this board in, wired it all up, and the machine was completely unreliable. And I ended up taking all the upgrades back off the board to try and figure out what the hell the problem was, which took time. And eventually I decided to look underneath this SRAM board here at the legs, because this board's essentially a precision socket pushed into a thin PCB, and the legs of that socket go into the socket underneath. And of course the thing was absolutely covered in blobs of solder. He'd put extra solder, far too much bloody solder on the legs of the socket that's in the board, and it had absolutely no hope of sitting flush in the CPU socket such that every leg would make proper contact. So I wicked all that shit off the board, put it back in the machine, and then it worked. So that thing didn't work as received. This thing didn't work as received and needed extra work on it. Just absolute crap. I tend to eat the time I spend doing this extra work on these things. Replace the fucking SRAM on this board. How many people can do that without fucking it up? Is the customer going to have to pay for this time? Who's going to buy one of these things if he's got to pay not only the installation fee, more money on top for me to buy SRAM chips for it, take the original ones off without wrecking the board, put the new ones on without melting the connectors? If you're going to charge this kind of money for one of these boards, put the proper RAM chips on it. You can't even put the fucking diode on it. Okay, with regard to PokeyMAX 4 and Sophia 3, Simius himself has provided some instructions as to how to connect a digital audio source to the Sophia 3 so that you'll get digital audio out of the digital video connector. So we've got this diagram here. Not the most intuitive thing anyway, but he had to provide a bit of a gloss to a couple of people to clarify this. But anyway, so this part here I'm pointing to with the mouse, that is the colour potentiometer, the trim pot to change the hue of the colour on the Atari. Now that's no longer used when Sophia is installed in the machine. Sophia takes care of all that. It's obviously calibrated properly to produce the proper colour burst signal on the legacy monitor output. And as I've said before, if you want to convert a machine from PAL to NTSC or vice versa, or particularly converting it from NTSC to PAL, Sophia is a good option because you no longer need the second crystal and the colour burst circuit to produce the proper colour burst signal for the legacy video output. You no longer need to bother with that because Sophia takes care of that for you. So if you want to convert a machine from NTSC to PAL, all you need is a PAL Antic, a new master crystal, and a Sophia, and that's it. And if you swap those parts over, that's basically it. You've got a PAL computer, and your legacy video will look correct. You'll get colour on that legacy video. So here's the colour trim pot, which is no longer used. And what he's telling you to do here is remove C48, which is just like a decoupling cap to ground here at the back of the XE board. This is pertaining to the XE, but the principles would be the same on the XL. Remove that capacitor. Now this trim pot goes to GTIA pin 17, which is the colour adjustment pin. So what he's telling you to do here is to connect the PokeyMAX SPDIF output, which is, I've just noticed now actually while filming this that it's described as 3.3 VPP. That's 3.3 volts peak to peak. And the reason for these components here, there is this 150 ohm resistor, and what I interpret this to be when he says set this to the middle position 500k, surely that makes a 500k pull down resistor. And he's telling you to connect the digital audio signal to the output of this trim pot, which is no longer used, and that will feed the digital audio into GTIA pin 17, the Sophia pin 17. Now what I found is that when I hooked this up, I basically got no sound. I got like a pop when I turned the machine on, and thereafter pretty much nothing else. Now if I'd thought ahead, if I'd paid a little bit more attention to this here, where it says 3.3 VPP, I might have been able to work it out. But anyway, I sent Simius a message about this, and he was very kind, and he replied very quickly, and I really appreciate that. And he said that I'd need to get the oscilloscope out and see if the signal on GTIA pin 17, the incoming digital audio signal, was 1 VPP, so 1 volt peak to peak. That's what we're looking for, and that's the whole reason for all of this wiring here and the resistor, is to get this signal 3.3 VPP down to 1 VPP. And I had a look anyway, and on GTIA pin 17 it was actually about 200 millivolts peak to peak, so about a fifth of what it should have been. And I sent him another message telling him that, and then I thought, well, hang on a minute, I disconnected this wire and measured the output on PokeyMAX, and it wasn't 3.3 VPP, it was 1 VPP, which surely is exactly the signal level we're looking for. So while I was waiting for Simius to reply again, I connected the output of PokeyMAX directly to GTIA pin 17, and it worked fine. So I've left a note, I've posted in the thread to explain this, but I'm now telling you on video as well, in case you haven't seen the thread, or in case Simius doesn't get around to publicising this. But according to Simius, the PokeyMAX he used when he was developing the Sophia 3 did have a 3.3 VPP digital audio level, but it looks like the production PokeyMAX 4 boards don't, and they're 1 VPP, and which enables you to just do away with this resistor, and you can just take a wire. You can take it straight to GTIA pin 17 if you want to, but the best place to wire it to, where I'll show you what I've done on the computer, take that pot off, take that cap off, and just run the wire from PokeyMAX straight to the output via of what used to be the pot, and that'll give you working digital audio. And I'll demonstrate this to you now. So here we are. This is the connector I've put on PokeyMAX here. It's the bottom corner pin there, the SPDIF output, and I've got a little wire coming all the way along here, somewhere under there, and it goes here. So I've taken the trim pot off completely. There's also a cap at the back, I'll show you. So that's the cap that you need to remove at the top there, C48. I took that off. I've taken that off already, but this wire originally went to the rear via there with the resistor on it, and that didn't work, of course, because that dropped the signal level too low, 200 millivolts PP. So we've taken the trim pot off as well, and that's the wire coming straight from PokeyMAX, goes straight in there, and then that goes to pin 17 of GTIA, and it all works fine. So it looks like that's the best way to wire it up. You can check this if you do have a scope. If you want to be double sure, you can check the output level on the digital output on the PokeyMAX 4, and if it's 1 VPP or thereabouts, you know you're good to connect it directly to pin 17 of GTIA. Now, for those of you who've been asking about Ultimate 1MB firmware upgrades, one particular individual was keen to see the new Spartados X builds incorporated into the firmware, and I did promise I'd get that released around about Christmas, but I'm kind of glad I waited because, of course, in the intervening time since then, I've developed an acid stereo plugin for the Ultimate 1MB, and of course I've updated the Sophia plugin. Now, if we just for a moment, because this TV takes a while to sync up to the digital signal for some reason, I'll just go on the legacy video output just to show you a couple of changes I've made. So we've got a few changes on the splash screen here, and I've made a few minor improvements to the base firmware. We've got the factory reset option, which I've talked about previously, and I've got some changes to how the firmware handles an Ultimate following a battery swap. You'll now be persistently nagged to set the clock until you do so, and the default date is no longer the 1st of January 2000. It'll be the date of the firmware build, so that'll save you a bit of time when you're setting the clock for the first time anyway. And of course here we've got the Sophia plugin, so I'll switch to the digital signal now. So there's our Sophia plugin. We've got 3 new options. These will be grayed out if you've got a Sophia 2 in the machine. We've got digital audio, mode 10 shift, and C-Sync level. So they're the 3 new options we've got on Sophia 3. And at the bottom, of course, I've had to change this. This is just now says Sophia, and it gives you the hardware revision and the core revision, and that works with both Sophia 2 and Sophia 3 now. And as you can see, I have enabled digital audio, and you can hear the hopefully you can hear, I'll turn it up a bit, hopefully you can hear the key click coming through, and that is coming through the HDMI input at the other end of this DVI to HDMI cable, and it works absolutely fine, so that's really good. So let's go into the side 3 loader. So we'll do the old U1MB test just to test stereo detection. Alright, so hopefully that gave you a bit of a taste of the quality and the clarity of the digital audio output from Sophia 3. I'm very happy with it. I'm sure the owner's going to be very happy with this one. So if your overriding interest when you're getting one of these machines upgraded happens to be picture clarity and audio clarity, I imagine you can't do much better than Sophia 3 and PokeyMAX 4. I'm not sponsored by either of the manufacturers of those devices in any way, shape or form, but I think this machine's gone together very nicely indeed. The problem I have now, of course, and the thing that's left me with a bit of a sour taste in my mouth, if you like, is these Ultimate 1MB boards. As I say, £88 inclusive of postage from Retro Lemon, but unfortunately I have to conclude that in the vast majority of cases, certainly 9 times out of 10 since I've started installing these things in computers, and bear in mind I've been doing this for 15 years at least, putting these things in, and latterly as my profession, my daily job, and I've done hundreds of Ultimate 1MB installs over the years, and it used to be a very rare thing when you'd put one in and it wouldn't work properly, but now it's a common thing. Probably 9 times out of 10 since I started putting these things in computers, there's been some kind of glitch which has required extra time. Commonly the problem is at least disguised by replacing the PLCC flash ROM. That did not work in this particular instance. I was still having problems with the machine. Whether it's because there was an SRAM board in there, I don't know. I had problems with the SRAM board as well, so if you buy an SRAM board and you have problems with the machine, look at the legs underneath the board. They're probably covered in lumps of solder, all uneven lengths. And you need to get rid of that before it'll sit properly in the CPU socket. Likewise with the Ultimate 1MB, if you buy one of these and it doesn't work, if the machine keeps booting to the OS memory test and indicating bad ROM, or the missing items in the Ultimate 1MB setup menu, or the machine boots to a black screen, or it keeps jumping into the setup menu saying the profile's been reset, you can try and replace the flash ROM. You can buy them on eBay. SST39SF040 512 kilobyte flash ROM. You can try replace that. If that doesn't work, you're fucking out of luck. You need to send it to me and I'll replace the SRAM chips for you for a fee. Obviously I'm not going to do this as part of the installation price going forward. I appreciate the customer who owns this machine. He's a regular customer, and if it wasn't for him I wouldn't enjoy having that work. But I'm going to have to add extra money going forward after this. If I have to replace the SRAMs on these boards to get them to work, the price is going to have to go up. So you've already paid 88 quid for the board, and then you're going to pay me probably the same amount of money on top of that just to get the thing put in the machine. It's becoming completely unsustainable, and it's such a shame. And I don't want Lotharek to take the attitude, oh well, I can't believe John is saying these things, he is swearing, we talk about our successes in public and our failures in private and all this bullshit. I mean, he says that he doesn't watch videos and he doesn't participate in forums. Well, that's weird, isn't it? I mean, I'm sure he's got time to sit down and watch Netflix after he's done a hard 12-hour day or something and he wants to chill out. I watch retro videos in my spare time when I'm not working, because I'm actually interested in the hobby. I'm interested in them. I watch Adrian's Digital Basement. Does he not watch the Flash Jazz Cat channel from time to time? If in your spare time, when you've knocked off work and you put YouTube on in the evening and you don't watch anything about retro computers, it suggests to me you're not really interested in retro computers at all. What you're actually interested in is money. But anyway, hopefully he watches this one, and hopefully the reaction isn't, oh well, I stopped selling Ultimate 1MB altogether, and then blame me for the fucking thing becoming unavailable. Fix the board. Put the proper SRAMs on. It's not too hard. They're only £2 each. Is that too much? Is that cut into the profit margin a little bit too much, does it, on the £88 board? Spending 4 quid on SRAM. How much do these things cost, for Christ's sake? Where are you buying these Alliance SRAMs? How much are these? 20 cents each or something? They're fucking useless. Oh dear me. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you have better success installing your purple Ultimate 1MB boards than I do. I mean, I really love this upgrade, you know. I've invested an enormous amount of my life over the past 15 years in developing the firmware, the replacement firmware for these things. I like them. I think they're great. I think it would have been nice if we could have had updated hardware, but that's going to happen now because the software is completely outgrown the hardware. But this is a great device. And it's been a cash cow for lotharek.pl for as long as I can remember. Ever since he bought this product, the intellectual property for this product, it's made him an absolute packet. And it's a respected upgrade. And it's sad to see a respected upgrade which just used to work. It was I'm not kidding you, this was one of the most bulletproof upgrades that I've ever had the pleasure of installing in computers, time and time and time again. Very, very rare was the occasion that this would cause any kinds of problems whatsoever. But now it's just routine. Oh, I'd better have a supply of PLCC flash ROMs to hand in case I have to change the chip to get the thing to get past the OS memory test. And if that doesn't work, I'll hot air the SRAMs off the board and put the proper SRAM chips on. I mean, what product do you pay 80 quid for and expect to have to do that when you actually install the thing? It's just ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But let me know what you think in the comments. Maybe the Renesas SRAMs that cost £2 each on AliExpress aren't genuine parts and I'm going to get a nasty surprise when I buy them. I don't know. I mean, Lotharek's obviously buying Renesas SRAMs from somewhere because he's still putting them on incognito boards. Presumably because if you put Alliance SRAMs on incognito boards, they just don't work. And therefore you can't charge £138 for an incognito board that doesn't work properly. But apparently it's okay to charge £80 for an Ultimate 1MB board that doesn't work properly because it's fucking purple. Purple is supposed to be the colour of luxury and opulence. If I can hijack the customer's remark that he made, it's more like the colour of the Joker's suit at the moment. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that one, and thank you as ever to my esteemed patrons for their continued support. Thank you very much for watching, and hopefully I'll be back very soon with another video, so bye bye for now.